So I loved, because Nick said, this is a fantastic opportunity to get your stuff out there. And he is so right. You're just not going to be paid for it. And then Nick also said, this is not pick on Nick week. That'll come later. Nick also said, the Wall Street Journal has 1 million people paying to go to their website. But the Wall Street Journal is the Bible of the rich. And there are 4 million millionaires in America. They don't even have all the millionaires. It is such a unbelievably failed model. And I mean, and Rupert Murdoch is in Idaho at a very nice place with his very young wife, talking about, this week, about maybe that isn't going to work. So the fact of the matter is, I don't want to blow any illusions here or something like that. If you have any left. But the debate about old media versus new media is a joke. There is absolutely no difference whatsoever. It's just platforms. It's speed. Radio was a platform. Television was a platform. Newspapers were a platform once. To think that digital is anything different, to have any sort of utopian notions about it, is a sweet fantasy which you will be disabused of during your lifetime. And the debate on free versus pay is an even sillier fantasy. I will just give you one way to think about it. Whenever somebody says, well, maybe we'll establish paywalls, right? We will make people pay for information. Imagine if you found Michael Jackson dead. Somebody did. And if you decided to take that scoop and put it someplace. That is a great scoop. You could probably charge an Anne Marie Cox-like level of money for it, right? Charge $1 million. Charge $1 million for that scoop, right? And you might get somebody to pay for it. But the other 5,999,999 whatever, all that other people in the world, they will get it for free. Because information cannot be caged and it cannot be stopped. And this notion, old media versus new, free versus paywall, comedy. These are the discussions of 1997. They are the discussions before we had the word blog. And unfortunately, old media, I should say corporate folks, are still defining our discourse about how we're going to have journalism. And here's the bottom line. Journalism is dying. It is literally under assault in the most brutal. I mean, if we were a dictatorship, if we were everything that Rush Limbaugh says we are, and the President of the United States announced today that we were going to begin closing newspapers and journals of opinion, and we were going to begin laying off journalists at a rate of 10% a year. Last year, 10% of working journalists lost their jobs. 10%. This year, we're on a track that is about 50% faster. So in a 2-year period, we will lose 1/4 of working journalists in America. In a 2-year period, 1/4. Now, I'm not good at math. I went into journalism to avoid it. But if I recall this correctly, it means we have about 8 years until there are no paid journalists left in America. Period. Gone, out of here. Now, romantic people will tell you, it's okay. Foundations will save us. Nick Penniman will get some money from somebody, and they will hire 12 of us or 13 of us to do investigative journalism in Washington or some cool place like that. That's dead. That's the end of journalism. It's gone. I mean, Nick will be doing great work, and it'll be very, very valuable. But it ain't gonna cover Keokuk, Iowa, or where people live. And so we have absolutely dead old media models and an absolutely non-functional new media model for producing journalism. It's not there. Nobody, and I tell you this, and you think, well, that guy's crazy. Who's he sitting up to? Who is he anyway? A month ago, I was in Oslo with the top editors of the most successful websites in the world at the United Nations Conference on Freedom of Expression. We sat around and talked about, you know, how's it going? Had the top guy from The Guardian, the most successful news website in the world. Most visited, makes the most money. You know what he said? Absolutely. Doesn't work. It does not work. We don't make the resources to do journalism. Period. Doesn't work. Google met with all those guys for the book. We did the whole conversation. Said, it's just not, it doesn't work. There's no way to fund this thing. It doesn't exist. And so you ask yourself, well, what are we going to do? This is pretty depressing. You can run from the room, hightail it out, or stick around for reality. At the founding of the American experiment, the people who started this country, who were very imperfect, had one good notion, that if you're going to be a democracy, citizens have to be informed. And so what did they do? They created a media system. The government created a media system. The newspapers at the founding of the American experiment were the most subsidized newspapers in the world. They were subsidized via postal subsidies and also direct subsidies from the government. Out of this came the abolitionist press. We addressed the fundamental sin of the American experiment via a subsidized press. And the segregationists in the 1840s ended subsidies because the abolitionist press was so successful that they were afraid we were going to end slavery. And as a matter of fact, it did finally happen. But the bottom line is, this country has a great, rich history of addressing the crisis of information for the people by creating a media landscape that can, through tax policy, postal subsidies, a variety of other initiatives, support working and functional journalism. It is the answer, and I would argue it is the only answer. The corporate sector and the private foundation sector will not or cannot solve this crisis. If there is to be journalism, there must be government intervention, and it needs to be the same sort of government intervention we had at the founding of the American experiment and the same sort of government intervention that we did when we occupied Germany and Japan. The German and Japanese press systems were created by General Eisenhower and General MacArthur with U.S. tax dollars, not by the free market. Bottom line is, free market's killing journalism, laying off a quarter of a journalist in a 2-year period. Private sector, nobody's coming up with solutions. The government has to intervene. Thank you.